feminism in crisis, or why do I think feminism is in the moment of identity crisis? There's a number of reasons. If you look in the mainstream media, if you look at the way that feminism is talked about, there's a bunch of different narratives going on right now. One narrative is feminism is dead. People love to write about how feminism is dead for various different reasons, declaring that the feminism is over, either because sexism no longer exists and we've abolished it, or because there's no young feminists anymore. Feminism, which, look at the people in this room, right? But this is a trope that gets repeated over and over and over again, that we're in a post-sexist society, that sexism no longer exists, and that young women aren't feminists. There are no young feminists. No one wants to identify as a feminist anymore. So that's one piece of why I think feminism is in crisis, because people are constantly asking these questions and answering them in different ways, but the questions are still keep reoccurring. Feminism is also having an identity crisis because of conservative feminism. Who's heard about the Mama Grizzlies and a lot of the main kind of the vocal conservative women in this last election that just passed this fall were claiming the title of feminist, right? Sarah Palin being probably the most prominent one, but along with some of her other cohorts in the conservative party. So I think that brings up a fundamental question for feminism: is who can be a feminist? Can anyone be a feminist? Does it matter? Do your politics matter? Does it matter if you're pro-choice? Does it matter if you're pro-woman? Does it matter if you're pro-immigrant? All these questions are kind of in the air and haven't been answered, but it's being kind of brought up to the fore by, I think, the conservative manipulation of feminism in many ways. I think feminism is also in crisis because of the shifting identity of woman and how our generation relates to the identity of woman. One of the things that is important to me to talk about, particularly in the context of kind of intergenerational feminist discussions, because I think that's a piece of this crisis too, right, is that a lot of older feminists and younger feminists don't agree. There's a lot of clashing. And sometimes the articles that are saying that where are all the young feminists are written by older feminists. They're even written by people in like big mainstream, reproductive rights organizations saying, where are all the young feminists? So this is definitely, sometimes it's outsider people, but oftentimes it's people in our community. So there's an intergenerational struggle here that's really, really important to talk about. I think that the reason that we're having to ask these questions about feminism and what feminist identity looks like is because of the successes of the feminists before us. And I think this is something that doesn't get heard often or said by young feminists or heard by older feminists. That this is not necessarily a rejection of feminism from before, it is not necessarily a critique of feminism from before, it's actually an evolution of feminism because of the successes of feminists before us. They changed my life in ways that I can't even measure, right? My reality, my choices are much, much broader than the choices of my mom's generation of feminists. Another kind of way getting to this piece of the identity crisis is talking about when the identity of woman isn't primary, like I just said. And this is not new, right? This has been coming up in feminism since feminism began, but I think it continues to be important and is starting to gain more traction as things like intersectionality become prominent, and I'll talk about the end. So there are many groups for whom the identity of woman isn't primary, isn't the first identity that brings them into activism or calls to them. This is people of color, this is people from a different class background, this is people of a different ability, this is people of a different immigration status, sexuality, gender identity, all of these things that maybe woman isn't the identity that I want to organize around, or the first one, or the only one. And I think that's been one of the challenges of feminism, right? It's felt like the issues that have been taken on by mainstream feminism have been the issues that really try to narrowly focus on what is affected by gender, often to the exclusion of issues and people outside of, a white, middle class, citizen, straight kind of world. These are some of the sort of ideas that I have about what's going on in feminism, why it's this kind of sense of an identity crisis right now. And some of it is very personal, like I want to carve out a space for myself in feminism. I want feminism to reflect my issues, my identities, the work that I want to do. I think feminism is really useful. I don't want to give up on it. I'm not ready to throw the label out the window. So part of it is very personal, and that's why I wanted to sort of share my story of how I became a feminist.